This week I'm super excited because we have Steph Lauer with us, who is Books in Badgerland on Instagram. So, welcome to the show this week.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too. So, we've talked about books a lot on Instagram for like the last year or so, and we have a lot of personality traits in common. So, we also send so much Enneagram stuff to each other, which is great because I had never like really met another one in my life. So now I have someone to send all of my Enneagram memes to. But we have a lot of books in common. We have personality in common. We're kind of in the same area of the US, so we have some Midwest vibes as well.
Yeah.
But I thought it would be fun to have you on and talk about you as a reader and the things you read and all of that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I am excited. I am currently reading a book that I'm convinced that the main character is an Enneagram 1, and it
Oh my
just makes
gosh,
me
I love that.
chuckle, and I don't know if anyone else would get it, but it's so funny. Like, he's kind of literal.
Yeah.
He's very much by the book with rules. So if anyone else
Yes.
out there the one, you would get it.
Oh my gosh, what is it?
It's called The
What are you
Reaping
reading?
on Neck Alley by Jess Lowry.
Okay.
Lowry.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he's a detective, but like he's in a restaurant and he looks back in the cook and he's got like a huge beard. He's like, is he wearing a face net? Like, why isn't he wearing a face net? Like, it just, it's just
Yes.
fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
now I'm excited for that one. I need to go request it too. Because it's not, I mean, I'm not trying to say we're so rare, but you don't always get the unique like personalities of a one in books all the time. So that'll be fun.
Yeah.
So to get to know you just a little bit, were you always a reader? Like, did you read as a kid, or when did like reading so much that you have a Bookstagram start for you?
Well, I would say yes. I was a big reader as a kid. My dad and brother were
Mhm.
readers. I would say that getting into high school and college where reading was not as fun, honestly. Like, you're not picking what you're
Yeah.
reading, it's kind of forced upon you. Really, unfortunately, made me take a step back because I just didn't enjoy it as much. And I didn't have
Hmm.
time for fun books. But then I would say probably almost 2 years ago, I really got back on the train. I think I was trying to scroll less, but then I read Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell, and I just was like, okay,
Ooh.
I found my genre. Like, I need to just
Yes.
put what works and stop trying to think of what I should be reading.
Hmm.
And it made me want to be like on my phone less and read more.
Hmm.
And then probably about a year ago in November, I started my Bookstagram because I thought it would help me stay accountable. Like, if I'm reviewing my
Yeah.
books, I'm going to keep reviewing them and chip away
Hmm.
at TBR because I just went ham on buying everything that sounded good. And then I just felt really overwhelmed and pressured. Like, what did I just do? I really need
Oh
to
my gosh.
read these.
Yeah. I think
And
that's
then,
a common occurrence.
yes. Um, I don't know if it's like the personality type thing, but I was like, well, you can't just have all of these and keep buying
Yeah.
them. Like, you read them, and what I just felt like I was over half really enjoyed shopping for books and half feeling overwhelmed by what I just did to myself. So, but I guess my favorite parts of Bookstagram, I've found some in real life book clubs, in person book clubs that I've met some really good
Yeah.
friends, and then met some online friends, which has been really fun to have people that
Yeah.
like it just as much as I do. So I don't feel like I have no one to talk to about it.
Right. I know that was, I think I may have talked about it before, but that was definitely my favorite part of getting on Bookstagram is like I don't meet people who
Mm-hmm.
like necessarily read thrillers. Like there are a lot of people that read like I don't know like general fiction. I think is kind of what
Mm-hmm.
that's called,
Mm-hmm.
or like not like self help, but I guess like nonfiction. I mean, people who read that, but I wasn't like running into people who read thrillers. And I was like, clearly, if the market's there, these people, these readers exist. But like on the internet, it's just so much easier to find people because you're connected to everywhere, literally.
Yes. Yes, you're so right. It was funny because the first book club I joined in person was in Milwaukee. So it's like right by where my mom lives. I was like, I'll go there. No big deal.
Nice.
But I thought maybe I could start a Madison one. And so I reached out to some other members that I saw were in book clubs around the Madison, Wisconsin area. And I said, I'm thinking of starting this thrillers book club. And a lot of them were like, that's not really my thing, but hope you have fun. And so it was just challenging. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is just like a different genre, but like I even try to read. I try to read outside of it and it just doesn't always hit for me the way this one does. The pacing, which is something that you and I talk about a lot actually too in books, but I think it's the pacing that like because so many thrillers are like constantly having things happen, so you're like figuring more and more out, and I think I just like the tension of that clearly.
Yes.
um but like sometimes other books just don't, it doesn't feel like they're like things happening. Obviously it feels that way to other people that love reading it, but I think
Yes.
I just like having things happening all the time.
Well, yeah. And I've realized, as I guess I'll talk about later too, when I talk about a few of
Hmm.
my books, but I feel like thrillers can satisfy a lot of different needs. Like they can be
Yeah.
really character driven, they can be emotional, they can be really fast paced, and I don't know, they can be so many things.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that that's one of my favorite things as I really figure out what my true taste is.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're kind of a mood reader? So I used to think I wasn't because I only read thrillers. And then I
Yeah.
started to realize, like, oh, I am in the mood for certain thrillers at certain times.
Mm-hmm.
So do you feel like you do that? Or in your knocking your TBR off, are you just like, I need to knock these off?
Well, a little bit of both. I used to make like these are my X month books.
Yeah.
And I realized that's not how I want to do it. So I'll notice that if
Mhm.
I read like a slower paced, maybe more serious mystery thriller, that next I'm like, okay, I just need something to like blast through. And so
Yeah.
I kind of alternate because I do
Yeah.
notice if I'm reading a lot of the like slower paced stuff in a row,
Hmm.
I need a little variety that way.
Yeah.
So
Me
it's
too.
becoming more moody. Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same way. So, like, because sometimes or like if I just know, like if I know that I have a lot to do in the next week or something, it's like I know that I'm going to prefer something that is a little bit shorter
Hmm.
because it's like probably just getting to the point pretty quickly and then it like matches with my schedule well. So
Yeah.
sometimes I'm even making decisions just like, oh, how busy am I?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or like, because it's like hard to sink into like a 500-page book if I'm like very busy and you're just like reading like 20 pages a day. And you're like, I feel like nothing has happened. And you're like, I guess it's my fault.
Well, and as time goes on and we get to know more authors,
Hmm.
you can kind of gauge that of like, oh, I
Yeah.
think I need one by this person now. Like,
Yep.
for example, when I'm just kind of feeling slumpy, like I know I need a
Hmm.
Lisa Jewell book. Like that's just kind of how
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, that's exactly what I needed. Perfect.
Yes.
So,
That's
you know,
why I need to go. No, go ahead.
oh no, I was just saying I always am trying to figure out like what itch am I trying to scratch right now.
Yeah. I want to start doing that with Catherine Ryan Howard is someone who like I haven't read all of hers yet. So I need to like add her into that rotation of like, what am I feeling like? Because I always love hers. So I
Yeah.
need to get her backlist back in my view or my whatever, my book horizons. That's what I was trying to say. It came out as
Yes.
view.
Well, so there was one girl on Bookstagram that then had a podcast, and I think she's doing like YouTube now, but she for a while was girl with the pink ski mask. And so
Oh,
one of her things when she would give a book a 3, or she would call it Honda Civic Reliable. And I just thought that was so funny because I'm like, I mean, not that I'm take away the rating out of it, but just the name of it. I'm
yeah.
there are some
Yep.
authors that I have found to be my like reliable group where,
Yes.
even if it's not like a 5-star, it's going to be good and it's going to be like good enough to
Right.
make you feel satisfied.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice having those. And then like typically there just are enough people that have a backlist. So it's like you can just kind of return to them whenever you
Mm-hmm.
end up wanting to and
Yes.
still mix it up with what's new for the year too.
Yes.
So, I did ask if you were able to think of a few books, however many, it didn't have to be any certain number, that describe your reading taste. So we can kind of get a picture of that. So, do you want to share a couple of those?
I'd love to. So the first one, well, we can swear on here, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first one that it's the title is the Mindfuck series, but it has like a asterisk in the F
Oh,
font.
okay.
I don't know, it's a title. So this is actually 5 books in one. And if you get it
Wow.
on Kindle, I think it's like they're each maybe 150 to 200 pages, probably
Hmm.
less actually. But I love it because my taste is very much female rage and revenge, like you. And this is one of
Yes.
my favorite revenge stories. It is also, I think, considered a dark romance. However,
Yeah.
um, I would say, as a person that's read a few romances, it's got like the fun stuff. It's a little spicy, but it's not
Mhm.
annoying. Like it doesn't have
Okay.
the third act break up. It's just
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
so there's a girl who something really bad happened to her when she was younger, and she works with a friend to try and um, seek revenge. She ends up falling for an FBI agent, which is a
Oh.
conflict. But it's very fun, and the revenge is really cool. And if anybody is listening that has any comps to this, I would love to hear it
Uh-huh.
because I have not found anything
Ooh.
like it before.
Oh my gosh. I know. I had not heard about it until you posted about it
Yeah.
recently. And I was like, I mean, revenge works for me.
Yeah, like the last book is I think called like Paint It Red or something. So it's
Mm.
just it's there. And I think the funniest thing about it, so it's St. Abby is the author, Stabby. I
Hmm.
think that was like kind of funny, but unfortunately,
Oh,
they've
that's
passed
amazing.
away, so they're not going to have any more
Whoa.
books, which
Oh,
sucks. Yeah,
oh my gosh. That's terrible.
I know. But I think the funniest thing about it is when I read this, like if you can see the
Mhm.
font, it looks like
Oh, yes.
someone did it in like Word 9 or like Windows 95. Like
Yes. Oh my gosh. That totally is.
yes. And so I think
Like,
that book kind of like stands on its own. Most people have recommended it to also really love it. I don't
yeah.
think that you need to be like a romance fan to love it. To me, it's a revenge with a side of romance, whereas some
Nice.
dark romance fans would maybe call it like a romance with a side of revenge. So I think it can
Yeah.
fit into a few different genres.
Yeah. You
But
would
yeah,
like Hurt for Me. Not that you or did you read that? I can't remember. I don't think you did. Um
you just had that on
that
author.
might what?
Did you just have that author on?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
we had her on a few weeks ago. That might be a close comp. Like there
Mm.
is kind of some it's not as much revenge. It's kind of there, but I feel like it would be somewhat similar vibes. There is revenge though.
Yes. I will need to write that down. I think I have it on my list that I type up.
Yeah.
I stopped like immediately buying everything you and Gare talk about and started
Yeah,
making a list.
I get it. I think it's because I don't because like I don't read physical books. I think that's what like I just make the decision like when I'm about to read the next one cuz it's just like then you just click it and it shows up. I think that's why I haven't like got like I don't have like a bought TBR basically or like I don't have a TBR that's like, "Oh, I've spent the money on this. I need to read it."
Yeah.
So, I totally get it, but you it might be kind of a comp possibly.
I love to hear it. I did read a lot of people, I have a feeling will say Butcher and Blackbird, which just came out, and that was like good
Yeah.
in its own way. It
Mhm.
was incredible on audio, very
Oh,
spicy.
really? Oh yeah,
But
that's another thing. You listen to a lot of audiobooks. Is another part of your reading
yeah,
habits.
yeah, I always
But
got
you have like for anyone who is like wanting like audiobook reviews, you do like talk about um like when you really like the production of it as well with your
Mhm.
reviews.
Yeah, if I am not into the sample, like it will not happen. Um,
Oh, that's so smart. I forgot that there are samples because that's like sometimes like I normally can listen to nonfiction, but
mhm.
then like sometimes someone's voice will ruin it for me. Like I'm just
Yes.
like I can't even focus because of the voice. Not that it's their fault. It's just like doesn't work for me, but I never thought of looking for samples, so now I'm going to do that in the
Well, I
future.
think it's interesting too to go from word of mouth as well, because
Mhm.
sometimes I'll sit there and I'll listen to the sample and I'm like, I don't know. I'll leave it in my wish list. Maybe someday I'll pick it up. But if a friend of mine will say
Yeah.
it was good, then I'm like, okay, I must get, you kind of get used to it as you go on.
Yeah. Mhm.
So yes, I do. I'm picky about it, but I do it.
Yeah.
So, speaking of speaking of what I've heard is really good on audio, I did not listen to it, is a book that's coming out soon that I know you and I both enjoyed called Listen for the Lie. And
Yes.
I would say that this describes my reading taste because it's really fast paced. It has a podcast element, and the main character is just like really sassy and sarcastic that I know we
Yes.
both loved.
Yep.
This one has a really short synopsis. It says, "What if you thought you murdered your best friend? And if everyone else thought so too? And what if the truth doesn't matter?"
That's
Um,
such a good like short version of it.
yes. And I will say I have read a few like amnesia based
Mhm.
books, and I've kind of been able to take it or leave it, but I thought that
Yeah.
this was a really great characters, really fast paced. I have
Yeah.
also learned that I am a sucker for like a really strong female friendship, and that was in
Yes.
here as well. So
Yeah, me too.
I think it comes out the first week of March. I think March
I
5th.
think so. Yep,
So I
let's see.
highly recommend that.
Yep. It is so fun. She's definitely one of my favorite characters.
Yes, such a memorable character.
Mhm.
I also heard that on audio, it's going to be January Lavoie, who is a really fantastic narrator. If anyone listened to The Change by Kirsten Miller, it's the same person.
Mhm.
And I'm guessing it's the podcaster is her husband in real life. So I think that's,
That reel that you shared was so cool. I was like, that is so awesome.
I know. I was like, when
They get
people
to do
make
it
it
together.
like more special, I don't know.
Mhm.
That's fun.
No, I feel the same way because sometimes I know that I end up liking a book more because I like heard the author talk about it before I read it. So
Mhm.
sometimes there just is like extra stuff that makes you like it even more just because you have like context.
Yes, I 100% agree. There's books that I've read that the authors have even been on Killing the Tea. Like I think May
Mm,
Cobb was on right, and I decided to
yeah.
read A Likeable Woman right after, and I think it
Hmm.
enhanced my experience a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. I feel that way. That's cool. Her, have you seen the cover for her next one, The Hollywood Assistant?
Yes, I'm
That
excited.
cover is so cool.
Yes, and she's a short chapter queen. I will say one
Yes,
of the
she
great
is.
things about Listen for the Lie and May
Hmm.
Cobb's books are if I see really long chapters, I'm like, I don't know. That's
I know. Yes.
And honestly, that's one of the for me, if it has really long
Mhm.
chapters, that might be like this is probably an audio option.
Yeah. Yes. I probably would make it easier.
Uh, Layla,
You're
no.
good.
Uh, the, my animals are just, how it is on this
It's
show.
okay.
But always looking for the sunshine spot.
Oh yeah. What was I gonna
But
say? I feel like
anyway,
what were you just saying?
oh, just saying
Oh,
chapter
Jamie
length.
Lynn Hendricks.
No.
She's the other one who has such short chapters, and I'm about to read hers is like really close in
Mm.
my basically on my what I'm reading next. A Lovely Lie that comes out in May. So I'm
Ooh,
about to read hers, and hers are always so short, and they all like kind of have like cliffhangers at the end, or like there's always like some reveal where you're like, okay, I've got to get to the next page.
yes, I have that pre-ordered, and I'm very excited. I've
Yeah,
seen reviews
it
that
sounds
it's
fun.
not people's favorite one yet, and I am really looking forward to it.
That is awesome. I hadn't seen that yet, but I love the concept, and then the concept could be kind of revengey too. So
Mhm.
we'll
Yes.
see.
And the cover's hot pink, which we both
And
really
the
love.
cover is pinks and purple, so I'm sold. I was dropping Tyler off at the airport a couple days ago, and there was this like cute little lady in like her 70s wearing a completely purple outfit with her pink luggage, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's gonna be me.
Oh my gosh,
It
it's
was
like
so
a magic
cute.
trick. Oh, that's amazing.
I know. She was adorable.
Oh, I love that so much. I hope I'm cool when I'm old.
Yes, I know. I mean, I'll be like comfortable cool.
Yes, yes, 100%. Oh my gosh. Well, my last one, I have a few that I might talk about, but
Yeah,
the one that I just finished and just gave 5 stars is called Don't Forget the Girl, and it's got a really cool cornfield on the cover. It takes place in
it
Iowa.
does.
Um, but this synopsis is 12 years ago, 18-year-old University of Iowa freshman Abby Hartman disappeared. Now, John Allen Blue, the serial killer suspected of her murder, is about to be executed. Abby's best friends, Bree and Chelsea, watch as Abby's memory is unearthed and overshadowed by Blue and his flashier crimes. The friends, estranged in the wake of Abby's disappearance and suffering from years of unvoiced resentments, must reunite when a high profile podcast dedicates its next season to Blue's murders. Tense and introspective, Don't Forget the Girl is an astonishing debut thriller that mines the complexities of friendship and the secrets between us that we may take to the grave.
That all
Um,
sounds so good. I can't believe
yeah,
I haven't read it yet.
I forgot when it came out. I think within the last year. It's
It was
a
last year.
debut.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a debut, and I will say it was a little on the slower pace. I mean, medium to
Hmm.
slower paced. It did also have a podcast, like so many books do
Oh,
now.
yeah.
Oh man, it had some sharp commentary to it. Like, and
Oh,
I
that's
loved that
cool.
so much. I think that you would too.
Same.
Some of the mixed media, like there would be parts of a
Mhm.
podcast or an article from somewhere kind of put in the middle, or like a Reddit thread, and
Yeah.
just the commentary of how true crime is thought of, and
Hmm.
how this girl Abby, one of the main characters, like how they don't really know what happened to her, but it gets overtaken by all these different things, and her two friends are kind of trying to figure out how they feel about that, trying to do her justice. So once again,
Right.
really strong female friendships, but also just some interesting things. And one of them is it has like a
Yeah.
little bit of one of the friends becomes a priest. And so it has not a lot, but like a little bit of
Yeah.
like how religion can fit into it and what that
Mm.
means to everybody. And that always interests me. So I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of cool aspects to it.
Yeah. It sounds like there's a lot of character development going on,
Yes. Yes.
which
I've
is
learned
always
that I
so
love that.
good.
Yes.
I know. Me too.
I never thought I would. Like to me, I think I used to think like character driven stories meant slow.
I
And
think I did too.
then I don't know if I'm getting older or what, but I'm like, wow, this is actually like the quality of it when you get a good one is
Yeah. It's
incredible.
more memorable. And I feel like for me, it tends to feel more real, which could just be because, like, if they're thinking about character development, they're really creating a character. So, like,
Mhm.
that could be why it just feels more real because it's like you can tell they've like spent time creating the whole person.
Yes. And also I think it helps readers give the characters more grace because I think
Yeah.
about when people talk about unlikable characters, and I think that
Hmm.
easily some of the decisions that these women make could be considered unlikable. But since we're
Hmm.
so in their head, you're like, would I do the
Right.
same thing? Like, well, if it's
Yeah.
my friend, I would forgive my friend. You know what I mean? Like you get just
Hmm.
more nuance, I guess, in it.
Yeah. There was, we saw American Fiction, which is a movie here recently, but it's about an author. So there's like all kinds of conversations about like the publishing industry and just like writing as a career and an art form. And someone was like talking about how authors have to be empathetic and kind of like sensitive because the good authors write characters that make mistakes but they still love the character basically. So like talking about you're so empathetic that you're able to write a character that has flaws, but like there's like also a reason that you like them or you still care about them, and so that comes across. I feel like that matches up with what you just said. Even in the theaters when we heard that line, Tyler and I were like, damn. That's a good way. That's a great way to explain it.
Tab that. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes. I mean,
It's a
and
great movie.
I think that's one of the coolest things about reading. Like, as I've been doing it more, I kind of reflect on it more. And
Yeah.
there's these moments when you read quotes like that or when you read characters like this that I think can translate into how you treat other people in real life. Like,
I
what would I
agree.
do in that situation? Like, you look at things from other lenses, and I think that's such a,
Mm-hmm.
especially these days, just such a
Mm-hmm.
important skill. And I think it's like a muscle
Yeah.
that can be worked and
Mm-hmm.
practiced. So it's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah, you do get to experience like other ways of thinking, which is like so fascinating because you're in a character's mind or multiple for a whole book. And so which is like then the bigger conversation, which is also in American Fiction, is then like why representation matters. Like representing like a wide variety of experiences matters, because then even just with like reading, it brings you like closer to a perspective that you may never live. Same thing with watching show or movies, like it matters everywhere, but it is
Yes.
cool how you can have a range of experiences.
Yes. That's really interesting that you brought that up because one of the
Mhm.
books that I was like waffling on,
Yes.
talking about because so this was a book that was kind of big last year was
Mhm.
Changing All Stars. And
Mhm.
I'll be honest, I wasn't sure if I would like it because it's set near future.
Mm.
It's um, really action packed. But I was like,
Nice.
you know what? I think I'm going to give it a try. And all right, bear with me. It's a longer
It's
synopsis.
okay.
Yeah. Loretta, Loretta Thurwar and Hamara Hurricane Stacker are the stars of the Chain Gang All Stars, the cornerstone of CAPE, or Criminal Action Penal Entertainment, a highly popular, highly controversial profit raising program in America's increasingly dominant private prison industry. It's the return of the gladiators, and the prisoners are competing for the ultimate prize, their freedom. So, side note, a lot of people said this is similar to Hunger Games in their mind.
You're
For
right.
like that, and I know that you just recently
I
reread.
can't believe I didn't hear about this. Like this
Oh,
sounds
really?
so good.
Oh,
I didn't
okay.
even hear about it.
Yeah. So that's kind of the basis, and it was interesting reading this book because as I would get a couple chapters in, I would almost get tired. And at first, I thought
Mm.
to myself, am I not liking this? But then I realized
Yeah.
there was so much packed in to each
Mm.
chapter that I needed to like take a step back and just absorb it because
Right.
it has a lot of commentary. There's even like footnotes, which some people don't like, but I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
Um, and like I was crying at the end, like you know what I mean. And I just
Yeah.
thought,
Hunger Games made me cry.
yeah. And so it's the one thing, and another thing that was a little hard was there's a few like multiple characters and storylines that you might get only every 5 chapters or so. So you
Oh,
kind of
okay.
have to think back, like, oh, who was that? What was
Hmm.
going on in their world? But if you
Hmm.
just kind of take it for what it is and keep going, like the points
Yeah.
are there.
Right.
And yeah, if
I feel like Handmaid's Tale is like that.
Mm-hmm.
as a TV show. Like sometimes you go into like someone's story and you're like, do I remember everything I need to remember? But then like it makes sense once you just like watch it or read it in this case.
Yes. And I think it relates to what you were just saying about being in other people's experiences. And
Yeah.
because I guess that one of the reasons I picked it is because I really do, I guess when I'm in the mood, like to challenge my way of thinking
Yep.
of like, how do I behave? What are my knee jerk reactions to things?
Mm-hmm.
I have more compassion and empathy with that. So it's just a really, like, that book hit a lot of points, and it's like action packed and
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
So
This sounds there are a couple things. There's a Black Mirror episode about basically like some type of like battling your way out
mm,
to like either like relieve debts that were like unfairly yours or something related to being in prison. So that's like always fascinating as a concept. And
mm-hmm,
then there tends to be, I'm sure, since this is like basically the private prison industry is mentioned in the synopsis. I'm sure there's all kinds of like insight on the strangeness of the fact that we have privatized prisons and all of that. So I'm sure
yes,
there's a lot to think about with it. And I love the Hunger Games
yes. Well,
and
I
all of
think
the action.
yes, the thing about the Hunger Games is, or the piece that might be similar in that, especially,
Hmm.
is the fandom of people that are fighting, like battling to the death, like Gladiator, like I
Yeah.
Hunger Games. I've only watched it like what the first movie of that, but
Yeah.
uh, the fact that they have these super fans, and there's like one
Hmm.
storyline where this wife is kind of trying to get into it because her husband's really into it, and she binges
Hmm.
like shows, and it's like kind of gross, but like we think about that, we
Yes.
objectify people, athletes, whatever, so it's fascinating.
And we just build them. Yeah. Even when it's not stakes like that, we love to like build people up just to like tear them down, like just get the high off of it. I mean, I watch reality TV, so I'm guilty of it. I'm just as guilty. But that's kind of the fun of it
Yeah,
and
and
the
I
confusing part of it.
yes, and I will say that there are some people who like sign up for it, but then there are
Yeah.
some
Oh,
people like in other situations where they like stumble into it, or it's like
mm-hmm.
their best option potentially.
Yeah.
So it's
Yep.
a yeah, it's heavy, but it's fascinating, and
Yeah.
I
I'm
knew when I looked
intrigued.
back on it, I would remember it fondly.
Yeah. Those are always good ones. And that
Hmm.
was how I felt when I just was like, you know what? I am going to read the Hunger Games trilogy. Back in December, I was like, I think I have enough time to do it. And then it was like one of my favorite reading experiences. So sometimes you got to go for it.
Isn't it exciting when you can get pleasantly surprised by it? I mean, it can go either
Yes.
way, but that's the best.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't, but when you do get a win like that, it's so fun.
Yes.
So yeah.
Um, the last book that I had was one that you've talked about, but I
Hmm.
thought it was really great, was Almost Surely Dead by Amina Akhtar. I
Yes.
don't know if I said that exactly correctly.
You did. Yep.
Oh, perfect.
Yes.
So I know that you've talked about it, and I know she's been on your other podcast. I think it has
Hmm.
some reasons I like it are similar to Listen for the Lie, like very fast
Yeah.
paced chapters, podcast element. But the reason that I put it on this list today was because sometimes I do really enjoy like paranormal light.
Mm,
There is,
yes, that's a good way to put it.
yeah, like it's not a horror necessarily, but and I also like to
Mm-mm.
learn about a different cultures, I guess you could say lore with
Yeah.
like the jinns and what that means, and there's so many different kinds and how it affects the main character. So I think that I've noticed lately that I really do enjoy that. Even though I'm not
Hmm.
like a horror person, I kind of like it on a light scale.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I'm with you. I was trying to think if I've read another one recently that was like, maybe not. Maybe it just was that one, Almost Surely Dead,
well, I
which was
almost
fantastic. I did love it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I almost did put A Step Past Darkness because that is kind of
Oh
paranormal
yeah.
too. Um,
Hmm.
it is interesting though. I think with that one, you weren't really sure, but I kind of like to know ahead of time if it's for sure going
Yeah.
to be a component of the book,
Yep.
whether it is or not, so you can kind of prepare yourself for like what mindset you're going to be in.
Yeah. Yeah, because every now and then when it's just like a part of a big twist at the end in like the last 8%, and sometimes if I didn't know, it feels like, oh, this was just like a way to like break the rules of like time and space for the sake of like, oh, it was actually none of these people that you thought it was. It's a ghost. So that's always strange when it's like just in the last like 5%, 10%, whatever.
Yeah. I get that way with kind of like some really obscure like conditions that people all of a sudden have too. Like it's like some
Yeah.
sickness that like 0.003% of anyone could ever get. Like
Yes.
I know that
Hmm.
happens, but every once in a while I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, okay.
Right. This is a solution, I guess.
Not what I thought was going to happen here, but I guess it explains all the weird twists or weird one-off
Right.
situations that happened.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I was reading one, I won't say what it was here recently, where like I was afraid that that was about to happen, or like that it was just going to be like a ghost basically explained a lot of stuff, but instead it was way scarier, at least still more satisfying, but it was way scarier. And it was that someone was in the literal walls of the house. Like there were
Mm,
like secret passageways. And so it was like someone was in the house with her the whole time. And I was like, that is more terrifying, but at least it wasn't ghosts. And then like Tyler was gone, and I was like, every sound I hear tonight, I'm going to think someone's in the house with me.
perfect. Perfect timing.
Yeah. Yes, and it's like wasn't expected from the book. I like kind of chose it because I was like, oh, this one doesn't sound like it's like a scary thriller, and it was like in the last 20%, you're like, oh my god.
It's only like the scariest kind there could possibly be because maybe there's some type of
Yes,
slight hole in my siding or something where someone could come in.
right. I
Yeah,
know. Oh my
yeah.
gosh. Yeah.
Especially now that like
Every
when
now and then that happens.
yeah, when we become homeowners, it's like, oh God, like when I lived in an apartment, they had like three entrances and every single one required a key.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Did you read Night Watching? I can't remember if I've seen you post about it or not.
No, but I've
I
heard a
know.
lot, especially from my friends that have kids, that it's just like so creepy.
Unsettling.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, because Audrey Chapters and Converse on Instagram, she
Hmm.
posted about it and like tagged us in it because Gare mentioned it on the podcast. And she was saying how much she loved it last week. And so then I was like, ooh, I need to bump this one up. And she was like, don't read it alone. And Tyler's gone all week. So I chose not to read that one because everyone talks about how terrifying it is. And I'm like, I need to be able to still sleep a little bit this week.
Yeah,
But
I
I
hear
want to
you.
read it because
I know.
everyone's like raving about it.
Yeah, yeah. And the few critiques I've heard, I think it's
Hmm.
just taste. I mean, I
I
don't
think
think
so
it's,
too.
yeah, it's nothing really about like the book itself. It's just like, it wasn't for me, but it wasn't, you know. So I
Yeah.
think that it is like
Some people didn't like the flashback structure, is like the only thing I've heard. And I'm
Mm.
like, I typically do. So
Yeah, I'm like, oh, well, I love multiple timelines.
I'm
So
like, that's like a selling point for me.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes when I see critiques of that stuff, I'm like, well, it sounds perfect for me. So sorry that didn't
Yeah,
work.
I know. I used to talk about that, how sometimes like when you're looking through reviews, even like a negative review can tell you that you're going to like it based on like what the negative part is. Or you're like, "Oh, you didn't like it because of that reason. That's my favorite thing in books." And so then you're like, doesn't matter that they have bad reviews. Sometimes you just like know that you're going to like it anyway.
Well, on that note, it's interesting because when I was writing my review for Don't Forget the Girl, I happened
Mhm.
to look when I was putting my review on Goodreads of what some of the critiques were, and people were like, "Well, I
Mhm.
don't really think it's a thriller. It was not
Yeah.
very fast paced or twisty," and so I made sure to just address that. I'm like, this is more
Yeah.
of a, like, notes on an execution, bright young women. Like, it's not
Hmm.
a flash paced, twisty reveal.
Right.
It's its own, like, it's different. And so I think sometimes setting people's expectations helps.
Yes. Yeah. I agree.
Because I'm like, God, if I recommended that to someone and then they said they were upset because it wasn't that, I was like, oh, I'd be so sad.
I know. I know. I try to share like as much information as I can come up with. Or like it reminds me of this and this.
I know. I know.
Yeah. I was doing that on my recent one because the recent one I read, it reads like kind of just like a mystery for the first like 50%, but like a good one, but it's not like thriller pacing. And then it's like a thriller for the last like 40%, which my
Mhm.
math doesn't add up there, but it is one. I was like, so if you're like looking for this, you're gonna expect this for the first part, and that, but then it did totally change and was like so fast paced all the way to the end. So some of those are like it wasn't quite a slow burn, but it
Yeah.
was like worth it to just get all of the like complex relationships set up, and
Yes.
then it made the like back half really fast. So
Yes.
sometimes I can't help it. I have to say everything about the book.
Yes. Well, and then I have a friend in one of my book clubs who, like, if someone says a book is slow, she's like, I'm putting it on my TBR. I'm probably going to love it. Like, she just knows that.
That's awesome.
And I just think it's so funny because people will be like, oh my God, it dragged. She's like, sounds great. I'm into it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. My
So,
sister-in-law reads like sad. She's kind of like that with like sad and like World War II or one. I don't know. She reads a lot of like war period pieces, and then sometimes though she's like, I think I'm depressed because I keep reading these sad books. And I'm like, yeah, I mean that could happen.
yeah. Sorry. No.
You're okay.
Yeah, I agree. I used to really love reading World War II books,
Mhm.
and just like some topics that I used to you like they had like YA versions of whatever, and I'm like, am I okay? Because I just don't like these settings where and subject
Yeah.
matters where it's like, are you sad? But I don't know. Sometimes they're
Mhm.
still so good. They're just emotional. Maybe that's what you're drawn
Right.
to. Yeah. But
Yeah. I just can't get into historical fiction. Sometimes I wish I did, but I
yeah.
also have plenty to read, so I don't need to be too worried about it.
Now, one of my book clubs that I'm running is a thriller
Hmm.
based book club, but a lot of the people in it don't read a lot of thrillers and they do read a lot of
Okay.
historical fiction. So I've tried to like find a
Oh
few
yeah.
and combine it, and it was so hard. So if anyone has any good suggestions, please feel free to DM me
Oh my
because it
gosh.
is,
There was
yeah, it's tough.
I just saw well, this doesn't come out until June, but there's an author, they're a team, Ellery Lloyd. So I
Mm.
read what did I read of theirs last? The Club. There was like kind of like a competition reality TV show vibe for that one that came out looks like 2022,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they just announced one called The Final Act of Juliet Willoughby, and so it is a historical fiction mystery
Yep.
about, and it looks like it takes place in 1938 and in 1991.
Okay.
Story of love and madness, of obsession and revenge.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay.
So maybe that, I mean, it's not out until June, but I literally just saw that and I was debating if I was going to request it or not.
Oh, really? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
our next one is The Frozen River, which has gotten a ton of good reviews. It's mostly historical fiction, but someone said at the end,
Mhm.
like, the revenge and like the female empowerment is like pretty sweet.
Oh,
So
yeah. I've seen this
okay,
one.
we'll take it. It's a little longer. I think it has some. It's about like a midwife from
Okay.
Maine and a long, long time ago. I think like 1700s maybe.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's what it says, 1789.
Yeah. I think it's like
Wow.
mystery more than thriller. However, I've heard that it's got some parts that revenge lovers will appreciate. So I was like, let's do it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've definitely seen that cover on Book Talk a few times. Like I recognized the cover when I looked it up.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting. I got like a few years ago, I got really into what is that? Outlander on but the TV show, not the books.
Hmm.
And that I got very hooked, but I think that might be the 1700s. I think it's the
Oh,
only time I've gone into I can't remember what time period that's in. I guess I could literally Google it like everything else I've been doing.
yeah. I mean, and there's
1743.
1743.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Outlander's kind of like a romance, uh, adventure, maybe sometimes you could say thriller series. I got
Mm-hmm.
into the TV show, but there are books too. So
Oh, yeah. I'm
like
kind
just
of
from
just
books.
like bookmarking everything that could kind of fit that.
Hmm.
But now it's kind of crazy, like what some things are being considered for historical fiction are like feel really
Oh,
recent to me. Some like
I
80s
know,
and stuff
like
like that.
19. Yeah, that's what Gare and I saw one that was like 1980s. We were like, what?
Yeah, right.
Historical fiction?
And then there's times where people say, well, historical fiction, does it count as historical fiction if it just takes place at that point in time? Or if they
Hmm.
really talk about like what's going on in the world at that point in time. And I was like, I don't
Um,
have the energy to decide that. Like, I just,
yeah, that's
I don't
really
know.
granular.
Yes. So, I mean, I guess if that was my genre of choice, it would maybe make more
Yeah,
sense. But it's probably like how
right.
there are people with thrillers. They're like, well, I can't believe that was marketed as a thriller. And I
I
sometimes just
know.
remove myself from that conversation because
I know.
don't know. I
Yeah.
sometimes it's like people are getting kind of dramatic, and I just am like, then just post about the books you like.
That's how I feel. Like I, I sometimes like I benefit from seeing other people's negative reviews, but like I just can't bring myself to share my negative reviews. I'm just going to share the books that I like.
Yes, I've
It's
asked.
also so subjective. That's why I don't want to like go hard on like a book I didn't like. Like some people might love it.
Right, totally. I agree.
Yeah.
I think like lately I've made the decision, I think probably in 2024, and I didn't really mean to, but I used to put reviews up of everything, and now I'm just doing like fours and fives because
Yeah.
personal choice that I just want to share ones I really like. But I do agree
Yeah.
that there are benefits to seeing what people like the
Yeah.
reasons they gave, they say what they said. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't mean to like get into the weeds about it, but I'd rather hear like
Right.
constructive, like if you like this, you maybe would like
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Yes. Because you can typically tell, even if it's something you don't like, you're like, yeah, but if you like this, you probably will. You can get to
Oh,
that point.
yes. I've noticed too, like with my own reading, that I'm kind of burnt out on certain like types of serial killer tropes.
Yeah.
But if people are into it, I'm like, this would be really great for you. I'm just kind of like, I need
Yes. I know. It doesn't always do it. Serial killers just don't always do it for me. Sometimes there's not enough other stuff happening or I don't know. It's not like the main drawer for me anymore either
yeah.
lately. I can't remember the last well, actually I can, but I didn't really love it, so I'm not gonna talk about it.
I think part of it is if it's included with a book that has a lot of other qualities, like, oh, it
Yeah.
was character driven and I really enjoyed XYZ about it. Like I don't even think of it
Hmm.
as that's the trope, but someone it's
Right.
like
I
a
agree.
yeah. So anyway, it's
Yeah.
it's interesting to really refine what your tastes are as you read more, and also
Hmm.
like they can be fluid too. So I think that's
Hmm.
really an interesting thing about reading.
I agree. Because it's like, yeah, you just do like find different things every year. Because there was the real deal that I read here recently was like just marketed as contemporary fiction
Mm.
was like mainly it. But I ended up enjoying it so much and it still like felt like thriller pacing to me.
Mm.
Even though it was not a thriller, you were like in the past and the present, you're trying to figure out like what happened in the past that made the present the way that it is. So even just that setup I think always works for me, but like I didn't think I would ever randomly read contemporary fiction.
Right?
But
Yeah.
I did. And then you're like, ooh. And then you're like chasing the hive. Like, is there something else out there that I'm missing?
I know. I know. So many books, so little time.